Welcome into our Sweet 16 prop show. I'm Mike Calabrese, joined today by Erik Beimfohr. We've combed through these regional semifinals and pulled 6 player props for you to get a little action on the Sweet 16 in addition to sides, totals, and money lines. And as a reminder, we know these markets can be a little tricky to find, so we're going to go ahead and drop these quick slip links into the YouTube chat that will immediately populate your props into your sportsbook of choice. But first, March is still the best month of the year, and not just for sports, but also for getting the best action deal on our Action Pro. You can get Action Pro for just over $5 a month for the entire year. And for the NCAA tournament, you still get Sean Kerner and Nick Givens player prop projections. And if you care 30 minutes before tip, you can get my picks, you can get Stuck's picks. And certainly with the movements, a half point here or there, or the juice moving against you, that can be the difference between staying in the black and bleeding out here in March. So go to actionnetwork.com/March now to get on board. All right, Erik, let's start out in San Francisco. The number 4 seed, the Maryland Terrapins, taking on the mighty Florida Gators, who escaped that showdown with the defending national champions in UConn. They had to erase a second half deficit. What's interesting here in terms of travel, Maryland was in Seattle for their first 2 games, so they actually stayed on the West Coast, where the Florida Gators played in Raleigh. They have to travel across the country. Do you think that plays a factor in terms of fatigue? And with this game being the second highest total in the Sweet 16, are you counting on lots of points to potentially juice up and over for you?
I'm not counting on a lot of points in any game in this tournament, with the rims that we've seen, with the basketballs being like bouncy balls that you get out of the little machines. It's been a tough tournament for shot making, but that kind of plays into the pick that I'm going to get to here in a second. And I don't think that the edge that Maryland has with a week off, and the depth kind of disparity between the two teams. Maryland the Crab Five, what a great nickname, but it's the nickname for a reason. They really only have five players they like to play. Florida being extremely deep, right? Especially in the front court. They're going to throw waves at Maryland. So I'm not overly concerned with it, though I am concerned with the bouncy balls that they're playing with and shooting with.
So in terms of the prop that you're targeting, where are you looking in this matchup?
Julian Reese, notably Angel's brother. I feel like they said that about 14 times on the broadcast the other night. Not Derek Queen, with the big game winner for Maryland, but he's been a guy I've been targeting for the last few games, just in my opinion, based on our projections, my projections, and really the matchup and a must-win game in the Sweet 16. Julian Reese super underpriced here with 21.5 points plus rebounds plus assists. You can get that at certain books, Bet365. Points plus rebounds looks good to me too. He's not a big passer, but he is a stat sheet stuffer, similar to Angel, maybe a little more efficient around the rim, not a lot of volleyball, but his rates are incredible. He's one of the best rebounders in the entire country. Great offensive rebounder, elite defensive rebounder. As great as Derek Queen is, Reese is a little bit more of the man on the boards, especially on the defensive end for this Maryland team. They run a double big lineup. The Terps do. That's actually going to be a really good thing in this matchup. They're an underdog, so you're probably going to see a little bit more minutes from that Crab Five. Reese, in particular, he's not going to get squeezed off the floor where Derek Queen's playing the 5 in a small ball lineup. Florida playing double big lineup as well, right? You have some combination of the 4 Florida bigs on the floor at all times is actually good here. It'll keep Reese on the floor, but even with those bigs, with his offensive rebounding and defensive rebounding, Florida not a great defensive rebounding team, despite all of the size and athleticism that they have. 146th in the country for number 1 seed SEC team. Not a great defensive rebounding rate. Reese an elite, efficient scorer around the rim with the pace and everything in this game. I think he just cruises over here, just like he did in round 1, despite them kind of taking away the bigs in round 1. Colorado State did, still went over this number. I think we see a big game from Reese.
For my first pick here in the player prop episode, I think it's fitting. The SEC, it was a clown car of teams making it to the field of 68. It was inevitable that we're going to start having some rematches as the field got whittled down. Here we go. Tennessee, Kentucky, round 3. I'm going to go Zakai Ziegler over 21.5 points plus assists In this stat combo, he's gone over this number in 5 straight games. That includes bouts with Florida, Auburn, UCLA. So the competition has been high and he continues to deliver. They need him to shoot more, and he's basically done that. His volume has gone up. He was a sub 10 shot per game kind of player throughout the season. That's been ticking up a little bit. But what's noticeable is he's driving to the hole, he's drawing contact, and he's getting to the line more often. From the SEC tournament on through this past weekend, he's making 6 foul shots per game. I think that's key for him to get into the mid-teens, which is what I need to go over from a points perspective to go over this stat combo. In his 2 meetings with Kentucky this season, he hovered right around this number, but keep in mind, Tennessee could not throw it in the ocean from deep in those 2 meetings, and he shot 1 for 13 from three-point range. I expect him to return much closer to his season average. And also in those matchups, though Tennessee lost, they were a little bit effective in terms of slowing the game down, not playing at Kentucky's pace. If Kentucky is able to open this up and play closer to the preferred tempo, you're just going to see more possessions, more opportunities. And let's be honest, Kentucky's cooking right now. Their games in March have averaged 163 points per game. I think they're going to be able to dictate that tempo, and that's why I think he's going to land on this stat combo in the mid-20s. So 21.5 up to 22. I'd still play the over here on Ziegler. All right, let's go to your next pick, looking at Purdue drawing Houston, which can be a difficult defensive matchup, but you are going with a player prop on points. Tell me about it.
Yeah, that difficult defensive matchup is really the key here for Trey Kaufman-Renn under 18.5 points. If you've been betting any Trey Kaufman-Renn unders for the last little while, it hasn't been going well. He actually got home against me. I bet the under against McNeese, and he got home at the very end. He's a great scorer. He's up to 7th in KenPom Player of the Year ratings. He's a great player, but he's really limited to a particular way in which he scores. And this Houston defense, which is elite in all regards, right? Number 1 defense in the country, defensive efficiency, not a team you want to be taking overs against generally. And the way in which they defend, they what they call monster. They monster screens, they hard hedge screens. They're going to get the ball out of Braden Smith's hands, but they're also going to collapse at the rim. They're going to take away that pocket pass that Braden Smith loves to TKR, gets him a lot of, he's the king of the floater, the king of the layup getting set up by Braden Smith. They're going to disrupt that play, but they're also going to disrupt the post ups. They double the post every single possession. TKR is not going to get his, back down turn, shoot over his left shoulder bunnies that he gets. I just don't really see a way in which he's efficient scoring. And as great as he has been, we're hovering in the 20-point range in about every single game. So we're not getting a huge discount on that number that he's averaging, despite playing Houston in the worst possible matchup against the best defensive team in the country. I've been fading Purdue so far through the first 2 games, and I've felt like a fool, but I think this is finally the time. The rubber meets the road here. I don't really see a way in which Purdue's effective, and TKR's, being limited by their bigs and their defensive scheme is really the crux of it.
It's hard to fade Houston right now. Number 1 in half-court defense, both in terms of points allowed per game and points per possession. So it is yeoman's work if you can score. And, to get to 19, that would be a pretty big game and potentially keep Purdue in it. So I like under in that spot as well. I'm going to turn to fading, quote unquote, the Cinderella. Yes, Arkansas is the 10 seed in their region. They have a Hall of Fame to be coach. He's getting paid $8 million a year, coaching up 9 blue chip recruits. That's where we are in the year of our Lord 2025 when it comes to Cinderellas. But I'm going to go with Christian Anderson from Texas Tech to make 3 or more triples at plus 155 out on the market. Anderson has fired up 6 or more triples in 9 straight games. He's averaged 7 3-point attempts in that stretch, and he shoots at a 39% clip. So this guy absolutely can be a knockdown shooter. And when you look at what he's been able to do throughout Big 12 play, he's hit this threshold in 38% of his games. So once conference play started for the Red Raiders all the way through this run here in the second weekend, he's been somebody that's just flirting with about 40% hit rate. So plus 150 on this, I think, is generous in terms of what they're offering. Also, schematically, Arkansas allows opponents to put up a ton of threes. They're 237th in 3-point volume allowed this season. And for that reason, I think the Red Raiders are going to bomb away. It's going to be a part of their offensive strategy to spread the floor, allow Toppin to do work on the offensive glass, and not have to deal with a multitude of bodies being thrown at him. So Christian Anderson, like I said, he's probably going to get right to his average number, throw up 7 or 8 3-pointers in this game. And if he just sticks to his season average, I think this is a better than 50-50 proposition that he's going to go over. So anything on plus money, certainly at north of plus 150, I really like. Any takes for you from the Red Raiders and Razorbacks? Obviously, you don't want to sleep on a Hall of Fame to be coach like Calipari, but this has really been the first March in a while that he's put it all together and pulled the right strings. This was an Arkansas team that about a month ago, losing to, some also rans in the SEC, we questioned if they would even make the NCAA tournament. What are your thoughts on fading them, at least in the player prop market?
Yeah, this is the spot I think it's the time to fade Arkansas. They have surged for sure. They have a lot more talent than a 10 seed typically would, but I also think they had a pretty good draw in those first two rounds. Kind of some underperforming seeds that were higher than them from maybe an overrated Big East. That we'll discuss that in the offseason. But St. John's just, I mean, couldn't throw it in the ocean in that game. Really, really ref dominated game. A million fouls, everyone in foul trouble. RJ Lewis not playing for the final. I think it was just one of those kind of fluky games. Texas Tech, to me, is closer to a top five team in the country than they are to a 3 seed. And so I'm just gonna side with the tried and true Red Raiders. I think they have a small in-game coaching advantage and an overall kind of talent scheme, everything advantage.
March is still the best month of the year, not just for sports, but also getting the best deal on Action Pro. You can get Action Pro for just over $5 a month for the entire year. So that lets you in on our NCAA tournament content. You'll still get Sean Kerner and Nick Giffin's player props from the Big Dance. And if you care, 30 minutes beforehand, you can get my picks, you can get Stuck Picks, all of our experts across all of our sports. And by doing it for the entire year, you're also getting in early on Major League Baseball. And in the fall, we got college football, the NFL, you're covered end to end. So go actionnetwork.com/March to get on board now. All right, we're going to finish it up with one pick each. You are turning to what should be the highest scoring game in the Sweet 16, an absolute offensive showcase between BYU, who's been red hot 11-1 straight up in their last 12 games, against an Alabama team that, let's be honest, they played with their food a little bit against Bobby Moe. They were tied with about 7 minutes to go in that game before pulling away. And then playing against St. Mary's, the Gales couldn't throw it in the ocean. They made just 3 triples in that game. So Alabama is able to win in a rock fight. Do you think they go back to the helter-skelter, up-tempo, push it, accelerated to the floor, throttle kind of basketball against BYU? And if so, what's your angle on how to play a player prop here?
Yeah, I think BYU is the perfect team for them to be able to put that pedal to the floor, like you said, because they're willing to run with them. They want to, they play a very NBA style. They're one of the best shooting teams in the entire country. That's how they've, made their run here, starting 6-6 in the Big 12, all the way the run here to the Sweet 16. It's, a ton of great shooting, spacing, and a combination of bigs that kind of do their exact dirty role. Little different roles for the two bigs, but it all kind of fits together really well to play this, space and pace type scheme for BYU, and nobody wants to play that more than Alabama. So the prop I'm going with is Mark Sears, 8+ assists at plus 580. I'm in love with Sears in this spot, but I think the facilitation part of it is going to be huge for him. If you look at, clearly just the total, right? This total is almost 20 points higher than any other total. That's kind of baked into some of the prices, but the Sears assists are sitting at a pretty reasonable number because people think of him a lot more as a scorer. We know there's going to be fireworks, but he's the overall engine of the offense. He's come on a little bit stronger here down the stretch after kind of an up and down season for what we expected to be a first team All-American player. He does still have a 26% assist rate on the country, sitting at 171st. So there's nothing to scoff at in terms of his facilitation. And he's gone over this number 5 times since we've turned into 2025. So kind of conference play and beyond. He did have 10 assists in that Bobby Moe, that Robert Morris win, where they were pushed, right? Robert Morris did push them to the brink. They did play at a very fast pace. This wasn't the St. Mary's game, and he got 10 assists in that spot. But the big key for me is the way BYU plays defense. They're really, really focused on rim denial, right? So they don't want you to get to the rim or score at the rim. Well, Sears is going to get downhill in this game. I don't think there's a BYU player that can keep him in front of them. So he's going to get into the paint, but they're going to collapse and they're going to, get the big guys, get the hands up. Don't allow him to score at the rim, which is Alabama's bread and butter, right? They may put up a lot of bricks. They're not the best three-point shooting team, but Sears is going to have kick out after kick out after kick out into these corner three-point shooters, Youngblood, Stevenson, etc., just knocking down threes to get to 8 assists when he's got a 26% assist rate in the perfect spot. He racked up 10 assists against both Texas A&M and Mississippi State, who run a very, very similar rim denial scheme, as well as 9 against Kentucky this year. So all of his best assist game have come against this exact scheme defensively, and BYU might be worse defensively at it than these other teams. So I love really anything with Mark Sears assists.
Yeah, I'm basically in love with over across the board, whether you're looking at, total points in the game, player props. I think it's a game that's going to be played in the upper 80s, if not in the 90s. I do like BYU to pull it out and add a little bit of upset magic into this big dance that has been so chalky thus far. There's another matchup that I like here. I don't think the underdog has a real chance of winning, and that's Arizona against Duke. But I don't think the Wildcats are going to go down without swinging here. And the way that they play is they want to go up tempo, they want to score in transition, and they want to bomb away from three. So how am I playing this one? I'm going to go Caleb Love over 25 points at 5-1. And I just don't see a path forward for the Wildcats to even hang in this game if he isn't taking a ton of threes. He's hit 25 or more points on 6 occasions since December 30th. And as I mentioned, with the tempo being so fast, I think there's a likelihood that he goes over his season average on 3-point attempts, which is 7.5 per game, at least just in the last 10 games alone. So he is a chucker. We've seen this in his NCAA tournament runs before as well. In 7 games in the big dance, he's fired up at least 17 shots. This guy wants the spotlight on him. He wants the opportunity to go nuclear. And if he gets some success early, I think that's only going to increase the likelihood that he gets to 20 shots. In the show that we did last week, I gave out PJ Haggerty to go to 30 points. I believe it was at 6 or 7-1. He put up 23 shots. The best you can do in situations like this is get the shooting volume. And I think we're in line for another one here, because what Duke does defensively is when they fall back into their half court defense, it's fortress like. You can't get into the lane. You can't get easy buckets around the hoop. So what are they going to do? They have to shoot from distance, and they have to speed it up in transition. In their first meeting, in which Duke absolutely put a straitjacket on them, they only had 6 points in transition. I think the response by Tommy Lloyd and his staff is to say, every opportunity, push, 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 outlet passes, secondary break. Let's try to get some easy buckets in transition. And I think Love at over 25 points in this one is the way to go at 5-1. What are your thoughts on that game? A Duke team that also, by the way, if they're sped up, I think what's lost in the wash a little bit is this Duke team is historic. They're incredible on the defensive end. They have the presumptive #1 pick in the upcoming NBA draft, but they're also #1 in offensive efficiency. So I don't think they're going to, essentially pull the ball back and try to make this a half court slog, knowing that they can score. They've scored 94.5 points per game in the past, let's call it 6 weeks, when Cooper Flagg has been healthy, started, and finished the game. So their fastball, their top gear is just so good. I don't think they're going to choose to slow things down. What's your take on the Wildcats and Blue Devils?
No, that's one as a North Carolina fan. I'm a St. Louis University fan and a North Carolina fan. It pains me to say, but this team is absolutely outstanding, and I think they've kind of learned that, like you said, their fastball, as great as the defense is, and it's phenomenal. The fastball is nobody can hang with us scoring the basketball when we have Cooper Flagg and we have everyone. I actually think the loss of Malik Brown can help Caleb Love a little bit here. They don't have the centers to really switch 1 through 5. Caleb can get into the pick and roll. He loves to come off that high screen against drop coverage and put the threes up, and they were falling the other night in round 2 against Oregon. He carried the team, had a monster game. He's been known to be a Duke killer every once in a while. I don't really think Arizona can win, and maybe hang around if Caleb has a really great shooting game. I'm not sure they can beat this Duke team, but if they're going to have a chance, it's definitely going to be with Caleb going off offensively, I think. So I'm on board with that one.
For Erik Beimfohr, I'm Mike Calabrese. This has been our first installment of the player prop episode for the Sweet 16. Up next is Nick and Sean Kerner at 5:30. So make sure to stay tuned to our YouTube channel so you don't miss anything. And as a reminder, if you want to go ahead and throw these picks in, we have quick slip links in the YouTube chat. We're going to have the same for Sean and Dr. Nick's show as well. Thanks so much for listening, and best of luck in this round.